Part 12. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 111. Chapter 111. Just speak, don't move your hands or feet. I'm sorry to bother you, Brat. Aunt G will wash the fruits and deliver them to you two later. By the way, do you want to prepare some midnight snacks for you two? Lu Ning didn't wait for an answer before adding, let's prepare some, you two will be hungry after studying too late. There happens to be some chicken soup left in the pot. Aunt G will make chicken soup wontons for you later. Aunt G, there's no need to bother, it'll be fine if we don't eat. What I want is what I want. It's the time when you two are growing up. You have to stay up late at night to study. How can you do it without eating enough? Okay, you two go and read a book. Don't worry about anything else. Thank you, Aunt G. It's Aunt G who wants to thank you. This boy is in your hands. If he doesn't study hard, you can just beat him with a stick. If he dares to hide from you, tell me, and I will punish him even more when you come back. I know, Aunt G. Lu Ning pursed her lips and smiled. Lu Xian's mouth twitched slightly, and he asked with a dark face, Mom, have you ever treated your own son like this? Ji Shu rolled her eyes at him, what do you know? Only a strict teacher can produce a good disciple. But you want Ning Ning to help you review, no one is forcing you, right? Now that you have learned, study hard for me, otherwise don't delay Ning Ning. Time. Okay, can't I study hard? He was afraid of the other party's casual thoughts. If he doesn't say anything, he doesn't know how many great truths are waiting for him later. Seeing Lu Ning next to her looking overjoyed, she couldn't help but raise her hand and hit her on the forehead. You just know how to laugh. Are you so happy to see me being scolded? The smile on Lu Ning's face froze, she raised her head and glared at the other person, and said angrily, just talk, can you stop touching me all the time? Lu Xian, sorry, I can't control it. When he saw her head, he couldn't help but want to knock it. He also knew that this was a disease, but he just didn't want to treat it. Lu Ning looked at the expression on his face and couldn't help gritting his teeth. When the other person wasn't paying attention, he jumped up suddenly and hit him the forehead. Okay, it's even now. Lu Xian wasn't angry at all. He looked at her and smiled rudely, hey, you short-legged guy, you really don't want to suffer at all. Lu Ning. Hit someone without slapping someone in the face, scold someone without exposing their shortcomings. I'm afraid this guy won't be able to learn it. The two came to the next door. Because there are only the two of them in the house, it is much quieter than the Lu family who are separated by a wall. It is indeed more suitable for learning. Lu Ning said to Lu Xian, first show me your midterm test papers for each subject. I will help you make a detailed review plan based on your mastery of knowledge points. After all, time is limited, so review from the beginning. It is definitely too late, so we can only review it in a targeted manner. Also, starting from tomorrow, I will arrange for you to do a set of papers every day, and you must complete them within the specified time. If you can't finish them at home, you can also do them while studying. Although answering questions is the most efficient way to study, it is also the most effective way. If you want to improve your scores in a short period of time, you can only review and consolidate wrong questions over and over again. At any time, correcting questions and sorting out wrong questions are necessary means to improve performance. Lu Xian couldn't help but twitching his lips when he heard this. Are you sure this isn't retaliation? She said one thing, not one. This is not a question, this is killing him. Lu Ning, you said you should study hard. Of course, you don't have to do it. She was not the one who was embarrassed in the end anyway. Lu Xian, when did I say I won't do it? I will do it, I will definitely do it. This girl has spoken, how dare he not listen? End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 112. Chapter 112. I am an obedient student, right? Lucien didn't just say that he wanted to be among the top 200 in the exam. He was obviously much more serious in class, completed his daily homework on time, and went home honestly as soon as school was over. He stopped playing games in the evening, stopped going to internet cafes, and stopped skipping classes. He seemed to have changed his gender. He didn't even tell them that they asked him to play ball after school. Hold a set of 5-year and 3-year college entrance examination simulation every day, and even study questions during class breaks, with a posture that almost catches up with prospective college entrance examination students. Weekend. Lucien was woken up by the sound of his cell phone vibrating. The curtains in the room were drawn, and it was hard to tell whether it was day or night. Looked at the bright screen. It is a text message stating, "Third brother, do you want to come out and have fun?" Lucien was woken up and was in a bad mood, so he directly replied with one word, "Get out." When he put down his phone, he glanced at the time. It was 9:28 a.m., and he had been working on the questions until about 3 in the morning last night. In other words, he had only slept for 6 hours. This makes the whole person feel lazy, lying in bed not wanting to move. Only my stomach made a growling sound. Lucien touched his hungry belly, remembered the breakfast he had missed, and then got up from the bed. Today Jishu and Luyu sent Grandma Ji home. There was no one at home, but there was breakfast left for him by Jishu on the table, but it was already cold at this point. Finally, I ran to the kitchen and got a bucket of instant noodles. He boiled some water in a kettle and soaked it in water before carrying it back to the room. There is also a stack of test papers on the table that he stayed up late to study last night. Lucien waited for the noodles to be soaked, then turned on his phone and took photos of all the test papers he took last night and sent them to Luning. Luning was listening with headphones on. Several messages suddenly popped up on the screen. When she clicked on them, she saw the photos sent by Lucien, followed by, "Little teacher, come here and help me with a question." Luning took a look at the number of photos sent by the other party and found that he had done a lot of test papers in one night, but his accuracy was not very high. She clicked on one at random, glanced at it, and found several wrong questions. Luning raised her phone and played a video. The video was quickly connected, and Lucien was seen holding his mobile phone in one hand and opening the lid of instant noodles with the other hand to eat. Luning looked at Lucien, who appeared on the screen, and saw that the guy had messy hair, his eyelids were drooped, and he looked lazy. He looked at the instant noodles in his hand and said, "What did you just do?" "Wake." "Ang," Lucien said, yawning at the same time, "I stayed up all night to complete the task you assigned. How about it, am I an obedient student?" Luning curled her lips and said in disgust, "Although the task has been completed, the quality is not very good. In other words, there is no quality at all. Judging from the accuracy of these test papers, it is far from being in the top 2. The top 100 is still far away." Lucien raised his eyebrows. "So, doesn't this require your guidance, Teacher Lu?" Luning: "That seems to be true." "I know, I'll go there in the afternoon," she said. "The other side." She put away her phone with a look of amazement on her face. "Third brother is really going to be a top student." Chunan glanced at the screen of his mobile phone and saw that the other person was not rushing to be a top student. He was clearly aiming to be a top student. Then he patted the statement on the shoulder and said, "Okay, let's not just play around. It's not long before the end of the semester. Let's go back and read. We can't be left too behind by the third brother." "Okay, the third brother is not here, and they are not having fun playing." End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 113. Chapter 113. Does your method work? After getting the girl's promise to come over in the afternoon, Lucien curled his lips in satisfaction. He didn't know if it was because he was hungry, but he felt that today's instant noodles were particularly delicious. So, after eating the instant noodles, before the girl came, he wrote 2 more test papers. Perhaps because I have done a lot of test papers recently, the speed of writing questions is getting faster and faster now. That girl was right when she said that falling in love affects her speed in answering questions. A person's energy is limited. When she spends part of her time in falling in love, the time spent on answering questions will inevitably be less. Yes, it is normal for the speed of answering questions to decrease. Tang Li was not at home today. After dinner, Lu Ning spoke to Song Wanzhou and went out. This time I took the bus here by myself. The 2 communities are a bit far apart. It takes about 40 minutes by bus. It was already around 1 o'clock in the afternoon when we arrived. When she got off the bus, she received a text message from Lucien, asking her to pack a fast food for him when she passed by a fast food restaurant near the platform. After a while, Lucien heard a knock on the door of his home. He put on his slippers to open the door, folded his hands across his chest, leaned against the door, looked at Lu Ning outside the door and said, "You know the password, but you still knock on the door every time. You don't mind the trouble. When entering someone else's house, you have to knock first. This is the most basic courtesy. Do you think they are all like you? Aunt G's family only told her the password because they trusted her. It does not mean that she can enter and exit other people's homes without knocking." Lucien raised his eyebrows. "My parents have always treated you as one of their own, and they treat you better than me, their biological son. In your eyes, my family is someone else's family, and our whole family is an outsider." Lu Ning frowned. How can this be the same? Aunt G and Uncle Lu were right to be nice to her, but that didn't mean she had no rules. No matter what time, it was always right to knock on the door. Lu Ning glared at him, handed him the snack box in her hand, then glanced behind him and said, "Why are you the only one at home? Where are Aunt G, Uncle Lu, and Grandma?" "My grandma has gone home. My parents went to see her off, but she hasn't come back yet." Lucien turned around with the packing box. Lu Ning followed in and closed the door. She changed into the slippers Jishu specially prepared for her at the door and entered. Room. No matter how nice your children's home is, it is not your own home. Grandma Ji stayed there for a week and felt that she was not in serious condition, so she insisted on going back to live there. Jishu and Lu Yu couldn't defeat the old man, so they had no choice but to send each other back. The 2 of them were probably worried about the old man, which was why they hadn't come back for so long. Lucien went back to his room first and took out the test papers he had prepared last night. Then he sat and ate while watching the girl help him correct the test papers. When I looked at the bright red forks on it, I couldn't help but tisk and said, "I thought I did a pretty good job, but how could I make so many mistakes? Does your method work?" Lu Ning raised her eyes and glanced at him and said, "There must be no problem with the method. If there is a problem, it is also your problem. For questions like this that use formulas, you can calculate the correct answer just by substituting them. Your formula is not, but there was an error in the calculation. In this question, the overall idea is correct, but there is one missing step in the calculation. In short, although the error rate is high, there is no progress at all." End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 114. Chapter 114. The probability is almost zero. Really, Lucien couldn't help but feel happy when he heard this. Then what do you think the probability is that I will be among the top 200 in the final exam? Lu Ning's pen tip lightly crossed the test paper. Looking at the red cross that took up almost 1/3 of the page, she said, based on the current situation, the probability is almost zero. Lu Xian's smile that he just raised couldn't help but froze. Instantly, even the rice in his hand felt no longer fragrant. He couldn't help but say with a troubled expression, "Is there no other way?" Lu Ning said, "It seems that simply answering questions and sorting out wrong questions is not enough for you. In addition to the liberal arts subjects that I helped you sort out and memorize, the science subjects also need to be strengthened." Lu Xian, how to strengthen it? Lu Ning, the reason why some questions that shouldn't be wrong are still wrong is that in the final analysis, you are not deep enough in mastering the knowledge points and proficiency is not enough, so the stability when solving the questions is relatively poor. Then let's start by consolidating the knowledge points. Especially the questions you got wrong. In fact, there are only so many knowledge points learned in high school. As long as we understand each knowledge point thoroughly, the score will naturally increase. Then how can we eat it thoroughly? It was simple for her to say, but how to implement it? After all, there was no time left for him. Repetition of wrong questions, Lu Ning said, for the same question type, if you make a mistake once and still get it wrong twice, what about 3, 4, and 5 times? I don't believe it. You will continue to make mistakes after repeating it 4 or 5 times. What if? In this way, there is no need for this person to make up lessons. It's just that this method is more time-consuming. After all, it is not difficult to sort out the question types, but it is not easy to say that it is simple. She has to dig out all the questions she has done before. Even if she shows up on her own, it will take time, right? But since she agreed to him, she had to try her best. As long as this guy didn't give up, she had no reason to give up. Okay. Let it be what you say. Lu Xian was also very depressed. He originally thought that it would not be too difficult to get into the top 200 with his IQ. As long as he was willing to work hard, reality gave him a slap in the face. It is indeed not something that is too difficult, but something that is extremely difficult. But the pit has been dug for himself, and he has to jump down even with his eyes closed. Lu Ning saw that he had no objection and didn't say anything further. At least, this guy's attitude was still good. Anything and anyone, as long as you have a good attitude, half the battle is won. Then he looked at him and said, "Have you eaten?" After eating, let's explain the wrong question first. The two of them spent the whole afternoon explaining the wrong questions. Only when Jishu and Lu Yu came back did Lu Ning realize that it was getting late. Maybe they are still waiting for her to have dinner there. It's time for me to go back. Lu Ning gave him the rest of the wrong questions to sort out first. If you have any questions, you can call him on his phone. Stay at home and finish your meal before going back. Let Xian see you off later, Jishu greeted. When I thought about this girl coming back all the way to help her brat with extra classes on weekends, I fell in love with her even more. No, Aunt Ji, I promised to have dinner with my mother tonight. Lu Ning refused with a smile. Okay, then Aunt Ji won't keep you. When you come back on Monday, Aunt Ji will prepare delicious food for you. Jishu thought that she would only go there on weekends, just so that the family could have a meal together. So he no longer kept her. I'll see you off. Lu Xian stood up after her. End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart. Soft green plum is sweet and wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 115. Chapter 115. Wash together. I'll see you off. Lu Xian stood up after her. Lu Ning felt it was unnecessary and refused. No, there is a platform at the entrance of the community. I can just go down and wait for the bus. If you have time, you should stay and continue to finish the remaining questions. I will check it later. It's not enough time. Lu Xian insisted on seeing her off. Lu Ning had no choice but to let her go out with her. It's just that for some unknown reason, the bus was late at the stop. It was still after 4 o'clock when I came out, but it was almost 6 o'clock when I got home. It's already half dark. While waiting for the bus, Lu Ning had already sent a text message to Tang Li, telling him that she would arrive home later so that they could eat first without waiting for her. Only when I got home, I found that the whole family was sitting in the living room. As soon as Tang Li saw her, he couldn't help but frowned and said, "Why did you come back so late? The dishes everyone was waiting for you have become cold." "I'm sorry," Lu Ning said, "I don't know what happened today. The bus was late." "You don't have to wait for me." She didn't know that everyone would wait for her. She should have taken a taxi back. Song Wanzhou smiled and smoothed things over. It's okay. Naturally, the whole family has to eat together to be lively. The children must be hungry too. I'll heat up the food. You guys should go wash your hands and get ready to eat. They are all cooked dishes, which can be eaten by heating them in the microwave. Lu Ning took a look at the dishes on the table. They were all her favorites, and she couldn't help but feel warm in her heart. The feeling of being remembered is not bad. Since she came back too late, the nanny had already gone back. After dinner, Lu Ning offered to help wash the dishes. Song Wanzhou hurriedly said no, but Tang Li agreed. It is not to train her, but the child offers to help share the housework, which proves that she regards herself as a member of the family. In fact, Tang Li has always been worried that she would not be able to accept her remarriage. Now that she is willing to take the initiative to make changes, he is naturally happy to see it happen. Song Tingzi on the side glanced at Lu Ning and said, "Let me wash it with her." Song Wanzhou smiled when he heard this and said, "Well, today your Aunt Tang and I will enjoy the blessings of you two, and we won't care about anything else." Before Lu Ning took action, Song Tingzi had already put away the dishes on the table. His hands are fair and slender with well-defined joints. They don't look like hands used for housework at all. But it's very natural to put it away. Lu Ning was stunned for a moment and then helped. The two of them took the leftover dirty dishes to the kitchen together. The Song family has a dishwasher, so they don't have to wash it one by one. They only need to pour the remaining dishes into the trash can, and then put the dirty dishes, pots and other things into the dishwasher. Just take out the washed dishes. Taking advantage of this time, Lu Ning wiped the table and packed up the garbage in the kitchen. When he was about to throw it out, he heard Song Tingzi say, "I'll go." After speaking, he took the garbage bag in her hand and went to greet the gray shadow lying in the living room. Gray Shadow is the dog raised by the Song family. Lu Ning also doesn't understand why a pure white Samoyed is called Gray Shadow. However, her relationship with Song Tingzi didn't seem to be good enough to discuss the dog's name. It's not that it's impossible to discuss, I just don't think it's necessary. After returning from the script shooting, the two still maintained a lukewarm relationship, not that there was any difference because they went out together. Looking at a man and a dog walking out, Lu Ning immediately looked away. End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is sweet and wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 116. Chapter 116 The Notes of the Male God. When Song Tingzi took the dog and came back from outside after throwing away the garbage, he saw Lu Ning standing alone in the yard. With the lights on in the yard, Lu Ning knelt down and touched Gray Shadow's head, and played with it for a while. Then he stood up and looked at Song Tingzi. "I have something to ask you." "What's the matter?" Song Tingzi untied the rope around Gray Shadow's neck, patted its head and let it move freely. "Lu Ning, I just wanted to ask you if there is any way to quickly improve your science scores." Song Tingzi's score in the last exam was higher than hers, and she had seen many trophies from his previous competitions at home, so she thought he should have his own learning method. Song Tingzi raised his eyes and looked at her. I remember you were second in grade in the midterm exam this time. I'm not asking for myself, Lu Ning said, I'm asking for a friend of mine. My method doesn't seem to be very effective for him, so I wanted to ask if you have any better methods. You wait a moment. She saw Song Tingzi return to the room, and soon took out a few notebooks and handed them to her and said, these are the notes I compiled myself. They contain some important test points and example questions. I usually review based on this. I hope I can helpful for your friend. Thank you. This saved her the trouble of sorting it out herself. I'll give this back to you after I make a copy. Lu Ning took it. It doesn't matter, Song Tingzi said, I'm not in a hurry to use it. On Monday, as the final exam approaches, teachers ask everyone to arrive at school earlier and earlier. What's this? Jian Nian looked at the notebook Lu Ning took out from her bag and couldn't help but ask curiously. The black cover is not quite like the style her sisters usually use. Moreover, the handwriting on the cover is clear and powerful, with each hook and stroke giving it a unique feel. Lu Ning glanced at it and said, your boyfriend's notes. Who? Jian Nian thought for a moment that she had heard wrong. He quickly raised his eyes and looked towards her. Song Tingzi's notes contain the knowledge points and examples of various subjects he compiled. Lu Ning repeated. Jian Nian's eyes suddenly lit up. He looked at her and said, good sister, lend me a copy. You must treasure a copy of the male god's notes. The original is not acceptable, but a copy is also acceptable. Okay, I just have to make copies in the afternoon, let's come together. Lu Ning thought that the other person was not a stingy person. His notes could help more people, so he probably wouldn't mind. Jian Nian couldn't help but rushed forward and hugged Lu Ning. You are indeed my good sister, I love you so much. What are you two talking about? Are you so excited so early in the morning? As soon as Shen Yu entered the classroom, he saw the two of them hugging each other. Especially someone's excited voice, which could be heard at the door of the classroom. Jian Nian picked up the notebook on Lu Ning's desk and waved it in front of Shen Yu in a showy way. We are talking about the secrets of high scores for top students. Shen Yu, there is such a thing? Why didn't I know about it? There are so many things you don't know. Jian Nian raised his eyebrows, and the two bickered every day. Isn't this what you're talking about? Lend it to me. Shen Yu grabbed the notebook from her hand. Jian Nian immediately said nervously, be careful, don't break it. Shen Yu flipped through 2 pages, his eyes could not help but shine, and then he looked straight at Lu Ning and said, Sister Ning, why didn't you take out such a good thing earlier? If he had known that there was such a thing, he wouldn't have had his pocket money stopped by his mother just because he didn't do well in the last exam. End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 117. Chapter 117. I don't know which unlucky guy will be your boyfriend. Jian Nian looked proud. I told you this was the top student's secret book for high scores, didn't I kid you? Such a good thing must be shared by everyone who sees it, Shen Yu said, and was about to stuff it into his school bag. Damn, Shen Yu, are you still shameless? Upon seeing this, Jian Nian immediately rushed forward, intending to it back. She hasn't had enough of the male god's things. It's just that I didn't grab anything, but I knocked the water glass off the table, hitting Shen Yu's feet. The latter hugged his feet and breathed in, you are such a rude woman. I don't know which unlucky guy will be your boyfriend in the future. Jian Nian snorted coldly, you don't need to worry about this. Anyway, no one will take advantage of you. Not to be outdone, Shen Yu choked, don't worry, even if you are the only girl left in the world, I will not ask you to be my girlfriend. Ha, Jian Nian smiled rudely, I think you are here to make fun of me, right? I am the only girl left in the world. I don't want to pick any little fresh meat or puppies. I need you to find them. Shen Yu. I'm so angry that I can't defeat her. Lu Ning saw the two 3-year-olds quarreling with each other, and said in a funny voice, "Okay, you two, stop arguing, just wait until I finish making copies and let each of you get one copy." "It's better for me, Sister Ning." Shen Yu immediately borrowed the donkey to go downhill, showing an expression that showed he didn't care about the other party. Then he looked at Lu Ning and said, "But, Sister Ning, why did you specially organize this?" Jian Nian was still not satisfied with the quarrel. Hearing this, he immediately said, "If you say you are stupid and don't admit it, it means that the handwriting is not Ning Ning's, okay. Whose is it if it's not Sister Ning's?" Shen Yu asked smoothly. "Jian Nian, the name is written on it, but you can't read it yourself." Shen Yu turned to the first page and saw the name on it as expected. Song Tingzi. 3 characters with clear and elegant handwriting. Just like its owner makes people feel. A transfer student from the next class, Shen Yu raised his head, with a flash of surprise in his eyes. "No, Sister Ning, you are so good, why are you borrowing other people's notes?" Jian Nian said, "What do you know? This is called a walking together. I must be my teacher." "I don't want it for myself," Lu Ning said. Shen Yu's mind turned around a little, and then he came to his senses and said, "Isn't it for the third brother?" After all, they had heard about the third brother's efforts to become stronger during this period. It is said that the other party has set a goal for himself, which is to enter the top 200 in his grade. Sister Ning's note was probably prepared for the other party. Lu Ning did not deny it. Shen Yu's eyes immediately fell on the notebook with his name written in his hand. "I don't know how the third brother will feel after seeing this note. He wouldn't find it very pleasant anyway." School is over in the afternoon. Lu Ning went directly to the copy shop near the school and asked the boss to make 3 copies of Song Tingzi's notebook. After making copies, she handed one copy to Lu Xian, who was waiting for her at the door. "What's this?" "Lu Ning, this is the science test for the first semester of high school. If you thoroughly understand all the sample questions in it, you should be in the top 200 in the final exam. If you also want it for the liberal arts, I can help you get it." "You sorted it out so quickly." Lu Xian looked at the thick stack of information in his hand. This girl must have spent a lot of energy. Before she could say thank you, Lu Ning said, "I didn't organize it, I borrowed Song Tingzi's notes." End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 118. Chapter 118 Sudden Resentment. The smile on Lu Xian's face couldn't help but freeze. I instantly felt that my dignity had been greatly challenged. Looking at the notes in my hand again, they started to look unpleasant. "He knew you borrowed it for me." Lu Xian had a complicated mood, and he felt like he was being humbled in front of someone. "No, I just told him that it was a friend who needed me. He shouldn't have missed you." "What's wrong?" Lu Ning raised her eyes and asked. "It's okay." Lu Xian took a deep breath and tried to adjust his emotions. "This girl also has good intentions, so you can't blame her." Lu Ning glanced at his expression and said, "Don't want it. After all, we had known each other for so long, how could she not see what the other person was thinking?" She spoke slowly, and explained in a gentle and soft voice, "I have read his notes. The knowledge points are very comprehensive. The example questions are also the most frequently asked questions that appear on the test papers all year round. Even if I start to sort them out now, I may not be able to do it. That's good. Of course, if you don't like it, I can help you sort it out." Lu Xian put the tip of his tongue against his back molars and said in a muffled voice, "No, just this. Face is nothing, now the key is to improve the performance. Aren't there still 2 years left?" Although he borrowed the other party's notes, it doesn't mean that he can't surpass the other party. This is called standing on the shoulders of those who came before you and crushing those who came before you. It's just that I feel a little uncomfortable in my heart after all. Lu Ning was really afraid that the other party would not want it, so it was best to see that he was willing to accept it. It's just a note. You don't need to think too much. I made a copy for each of Jian Nian, Shen Yu, and the others. Everyone is doing it to improve their studies. This is not a shameful thing, she said. If it were anyone else, he wouldn't feel embarrassed, but Lu Xian felt heartbroken just thinking about Song Tingzi's words. It seems that you can only save your own face by trying to surpass the other party. By the way, would you like to make a copy of the statement and Chunan's as well? Lu Ning suddenly remembered. In line with the principle of sharing good things, and since Shen Yu already had Jian Nian, Lu Ning felt that he could not favor one over the other. Lu Xian's face darkened. No, they don't need it. This girl just prepared it for herself, so why should she prepare it for them? Besides, he didn't want others to know that he was using someone's things. Cao has arrived. As soon as Lu Xian finished speaking, he heard a voice from across the road saying, "Third brother, Sister Ning, are you two okay? The bus is coming soon." Lu Ning waved to the two of them, and when they approached, she said, "I have some review materials here, do you two need them? If necessary, I will print out 2 more copies." Hearing this, Zhang Shu nodded immediately and looked at Lu Ning with gratitude. "Thank you, heroine, for saving my life. I was worried about how to review for the final semester. Last time, my mother was summoned by the class teacher and she had already given me the final exam. Warning, if I don't do well in the final exam this time, I will be kicked out of the house and disowned as my son. You have saved a child who is about to become homeless." Chunan smiled and said, "Sister Ning is indeed a kind-hearted little fairy, so I want a share too, thank you." "Ha," Lu Xian on the side sneered, "don't thank me too early. I don't know if it will be useful." Shunan and Chunan looked at each other. What's the matter with third brother's sudden resentment? End of this chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is sweet and wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 119. Chapter 119. There is only one person in the world who can control my mobile phone. Are you sure you want to? The statement then smiled flatteringly at Lu Ning, and then said to Lu Xian, "How could the notes given by Sister Ning be useless? Besides, third brother, didn't you take it yourself? You must be reluctant to give Sister Ning to you. You just said that on purpose because you prepared good things for us to share, right?" Lu Xian couldn't help but choked, wondering if it was too late for him to throw it away now. "Okay, wait for me." Lu Ning held back her laughter and returned to the printing shop. After a while, she came out with 2 copies of the notes and gave them to the 2 of them. Both of them thought the note belonged to Lu Ning, and thanked her again. Lu Ning didn't bother to explain, so he could save someone's face. Helping Lu Xian get the notes, Lu Ning felt liberated. After finishing a set of real questions and memorizing a set of English vocabulary, she took out her mobile phone and started playing the game. Lu Xian on the side noticed her movements out of the corner of his eye. He couldn't help but raise his head, tapped his fingers on the table and said, "Falling in love will affect your speed of answering questions, but playing games won't. Lu Ning, I call it a balance between work and rest, and proper relaxation. Besides, playing games can enhance my thinking ability, exercise my hand speed, and help improve my problem-solving speed." "Really? Then I'll play a game too," Lu Xian said and reached out to pick up the mobile phone on the table. Lu Ning raised her head and glanced at him, and said politely, "Have you understood all those examples? Are you sure you can get into the top 200? Are you starting to think about playing games? Lu Xian, didn't you say that we need to balance work and rest? Playing games can help improve the speed of solving problems. I've been watching this for so long, shouldn't it be time to relax? How about it, do you want my brother to take you to swim in the canyon? Lu Ning, no need. Also, a scumbag is not qualified to relax. If you want to play games, wait until you finish reading all the questions above and understand them. No, with such a thick stack of notes, how could I read them all at once? I have to admit that someone really remembered his notes very carefully. During this time, he compared the notes and reviewed them, and he made more mistakes than after answering the questions. The efficiency of the question is much higher. So even though he still felt a little awkward, he didn't read someone's notes less. If you can't finish it, read it slowly. We'll tell you when you finish it. As for your phone, leave it with me for the time being. I'll keep it for you so as not to affect your review, Lu Ning said and stretched out his hand towards the other party. Lu Xian raised his eyebrows and looked at her with a half smile. There is only one person in the world who can control my mobile phone. Are you sure you want it? Lu Ning, don't worry, I'm just keeping it, I won't peek at your phone. Lu Xian didn't know if she really didn't understand what he meant or if she pretended not to understand. He was angry and funny in his heart. You are such a heartless person. You don't even know who I am working so hard for. What did you say? His voice was so low that Lu Ning couldn't hear it clearly. Nothing. I listened to you, but you are my little teacher now. So, little teacher, I still don't know this question, can you explain it to me? Lu Ning put down her phone and looked over. Which question? This Lu Xian tapped his finger on the note. Lu Ning was sitting a little far away and couldn't see the question clearly. He stood up subconsciously, but his foot was tripped by Lu Xian's long legs stretched out, and he threw himself forward. End of this chapter. The School Sweetheart Soft Green Plum is Sweet and Wild. Author, Pearfish. Chapter 120. Chapter 120. Do you want to get up first? Lu Xian was leaning on the table with one elbow and spinning his pen boredly with the other hand. When he saw the girl suddenly rushing towards him, he was a little surprised. He didn't reach out to pick it up until he realized the situation. The fragrant and soft ball came directly to him. He threw himself into his arms. Out of instinct, Lu Ning stretched out her hand to hold onto something, but failed to hold onto anything. Instead, she fell headlong into Lu Xian's arms. The palm of her hand pressed against the other person's warm and hard chest, making her stunned for a moment. It was almost June and the weather was getting hotter. Lu Ning only wore a thin short knitted sweater. Following her movements, her slender waist was exposed. By chance, Lu Xian's hand landed on that soft waist. The skin under his palm was delicate and smooth. His fingertips trembled and he forgot to take it back for a moment. The air felt eerily quiet for a moment. I. After a moment, the two of them came to their senses, spoke at the same time, and stopped at the same time. Finally, Lu Xian cleared his voice and spoke first. Ahem, do you want to get up first? Only then did Lu Ning realize that the two of them were too close to each other at this moment. Her face turned red for a moment and she hurriedly got up from his arms. She did not forget to accuse the other person and said, "Can you please stop putting your legs around next time, don't you know how long your legs are?" Lu Xian laughed softly, as if the girl was praising him, and said in a gentle and doting voice, "Okay." Lu Ning's face suddenly became hotter. She felt like an unreasonable child. She tried her best to ignore the weird feeling in her heart. She pretended to look at Lu Xian calmly and said, "Didn't you say that you can't understand some of the questions, Road?" Lu Xian, "Oh, I suddenly realized that I can do it again." Lu Ning gave the guy a hard look. Are you sure he wasn't playing a trick on her? It's getting late, I'm going back to sleep. You can take your time and see the rest. She was afraid that her whole body would burn if she stayed any longer. Lu Ning packed up her things, picked up her schoolbag and was about to go out. Luning Lucian suddenly called her from behind. What's wrong? Luning turned her head. Forget it, it's nothing. Lucian touched his nose, swallowed the words on his lips, and told her, go to bed early at night and stop playing games. Oh, I'm going back then. The other party rarely called her by her name, and every time she was either called a child or her sister. Especially with such a serious tone, she thought the other party was going to say something, but in the end he just told her not to play games. Luning considers herself not a game fan, and only occasionally takes it out to play a few games when she is tired from answering questions. However, in order to avoid affecting the other party, it seems that it is better not to play in front of the other party in the future. Early in the morning, when Luning came out of her home, she saw Lucian already leaning at the door, waiting for her. It's rare for this guy to get up so early without being called out by others. However, the other person's eyes were obviously blue-gray, and it seemed that he had not slept well last night. This guy couldn't have been studying very late last night after he left, right? It seems that he is really serious about getting into the top 200 in his grade this time. He has never been so active during the high school entrance examination before. Actually, you don't have to work so hard. Your body is the capital of revolution. Although review is important, your body is equally important, Luning advised. It's a good thing that he's willing to make progress, but he doesn't have to go to such lengths. You know, haste makes waste. Lucian knew that the girl had misunderstood, but he did not explain.